Sorry, I was trying to mess with it like on the refresh, but I know doing it live last night on the other site, it's like throwing it. I should have like restarted because it throws off like the aspect ratio or something on the other side. So I think that just means it's a bit closer. Um, the different, the screen will be a bit different, closer, but maybe a little bit the shape different, but cut. But I wanted to get started. So look at the sparkle dress I found. I hope that it'll catch the light when I'm laying down. Yeah, it's like 1,000 rhinestones. So I wanted to put on some sparkle heels. Um, so yeah, this is definitely. I mean, I could bring it up a little bit, but it's definitely. Well, I'm gonna refresh it for tomorrow. But whatever. Yeah, yeah, just lie right there. Uh, okay, let me put my heels on. I know some of you are off on Sundays, so it's nice you can hang out. Um, yeah, this has catch so many lights this way. I don't even know if you can tell, but it's like purpley, this dress. Bella, it's like a little bit warm in here. It's a little bit hot, and she's covered in fur. So I think she's like trying a little bit to stay. I could put the fan on actually. You might hear a little bit of dinging, but it might be cooler for her. But the thing is, it's gone to the point where, because you can watch me stand up in my hands. It's gone to the point where, well, maybe I shouldn't say gotten because it can always change, but it's like cooler at night. And depending on if I put the air conditioning really low, I could be like too cool at night. I don't know. I don't know. I'll put the fan on. We'll figure it out. Okay. Uh, Let me uh, trip over this blanket. Although I guess if I'm gonna fall, I might as well fall on camera so you could help me call an ambulance if it comes to that. See now, look, you dropped your gizmo. Okay. If you hear like a ding ding ding, that's the chain from yes, this hi. I guess she found something to eat. I don't know. um from the middle of the fans, it tends to go like cling cling cling, but whatever. We'll do with it. Okay. Mm. I told you guys last night on the other site that John bought us our second one in the installment. So anyone that didn't catch it or the replay, um, it's it's coming. Let me play this up. Uh, mm, The unsettling realization that I had no idea how much of my thoughts Fiat had read before I erected my barriers kept me on tender hooks until the taxi I hailed dropped us off at Ophelia and Perdita's apartment. Bitch, you better take a shower and not be smelling like sewage going there. Mm. Oh yeah, so that yeah, because remember it was a rough time for her on Thursday. Um I wasn't sure if Fiat had been able to tell who was offering me shelter, but I hadn't thought he had, at least I hoped he hadn't. And since no one was waiting for me outside the door or inside the apartment, I tucked the keys Ophelia had given me into my bag and slunk off to the tiled bathroom to wash off the stench of the sewers. It was shortly after 9 when I emerged from the bathroom in a plume of jasmine scented steam, sore and scraped from crawling in the well, not to mention dragging a huge demon in a Newfoundland suit up the side of a wall, but at least I was clean. I left Ophelia and Perdita a note explaining that I was too tired to make an appearance at G&T that night, and after taking Jim for his evening walkies in a nearby park, crawled into bed and slipped almost immediately into a deep, dreamless sleep. At least it started out dreamless. I am so not doing this, I said as I walked into a pool of light. I had no idea where I was other than there was the faintest sense of a tall, arched ceiling above me and a long, narrow space that resembled the inside of a Gothic cathedral. But I knew Drake was somewhere in the shadows. I spun around, suddenly aware that I wasn't in the cream and lace nightie he had dreamed me into for the last two dreams. This time I was wearing a very tight red and black flamenco dress, complete with ruffled sleeves, low cut bodice exposing a fair portion of my bosom and all of my back, and a slinky hip hugging skirt that clung to my thighs before flaring out to open into black and red ruffles. It was a very sexy dress, much more daring and seductive than anything I'd ever worn. Watch, she has like an erotic dream about him, but then it's like she blames him, but then it's like, wait, I that was all you. I didn't invade your dream last night. Mm. The tango music seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere as Drake sauntered out into the circle of light, clad almost completely in black. The light source above us shone down on his black satin shirt, turning it into liquid ebony as it rippled across his chest and arms. He stopped and held out his hand for me. Without thinking, I did a twirl toward him, clasping his hand and continuing to turn until I was flush against him. Our hands locked together in the small of my back, the blood red sash at his waist, matching my dress exactly. I don't tango, I said, breathless as I always was in his presence. Now you do. His voice, deep and rich and filled with all sorts of erotic, unspoken promises, stroked down my spine with a touch that left me shivering. But whether it was with fear or arousal, I was unwilling to admit. I twirled away, Drake following me, our bodies coming together in a sensual dance that had no choreography other than the need to be near each other. The tango music demanded. We danced. His body asked. Mine answered. Well, I guess if you're like 300 and whatever years old, you could get more practiced at the art of flamenco tango. My legs moving in and out and around his, my foot sliding slowly up in his calf. Actually, Terry, you were in Spain. Did you see any tango dancers? And you were there. In a caress that almost did me in. We moved together, sweeping a sultry, sensual line down the pool of light, my skirt caressing his legs as we danced without words. without even touching, just a breath apart and yet bound tighter by our mutual passion than mere contact alone could promise. I swung around him to the left. He spun to the right, our bodies meeting again, moving off in another direction as the pulse of the music drove us harder. My eyes never left his glittering green gaze as his hand slid around my waist, holding me suspended in a moment so filled with tangled emotions that I couldn't speak. Then it passed, and we swayed into another sweeping path through the pool of light, our hearts beating an identical rhythm. Why did you leave me? Drake asked as he bent me backwards over his arm, his face shadowed. Why did you run from me? Yeah, and why did you get rid of that demon I put in my room? I slid down his thigh, swung my leg through his, and did an amazing little turn that rubbed most of my back against his. He caught my arm, spinning me until my vision blurred, slowing me to stop with my back pressed against his chest, his fingers digging into my hips. As he directed us in another pass through the light. You know the answer to that, Drake. I don't have to defend my actions to you. His breath was hot on my neck. Oddly enough, during the whole of our dance, I hadn't felt even a wisp of his fire. But suddenly it consumed me, raging through me until I realized that what I felt wasn't his desire, but his anger. I spun to face him, rubbing my breast against his satin chest as we danced a line of intricate footwork that would have, had it been real, probably left me with at least one broken ankle. A dance of passion, but I guess not necessarily good passion. I don't understand you. I've tried, but it's impossible. I don't know what you want from me. He spun me outward. I twirled back to him, wrapping his arm around my waist as I turned. Would the safety of the mortal world be too much to ask? His fire raged through me, setting my soul ablaze. I embraced it, opening my arms to let the fire flow back to him. I don't know what you're talking about, Ashling, but whatever game you're playing is a dangerous one. Who is protecting you? I smiled as I did a provocative step around his body, the fingers of one hand trailing just above the sash of red at his waist as I circled him. I don't have to tell you anything. We may have some strange metaphysical tie, and we might have had indulged ourselves in the last dream, but that doesn't mean we are meant to be together, nor do I have to listen to anything you say. You will answer my question, Drake growled, the deep sound thrumming in my blood for a moment before merging with the fire within me, growing hotter until it burned with a white flame. I laughed and arched my back when his body got all bossy with mine in time to the music. This may be your dream, but it doesn't mean I will do anything I don't want to do. We have made it. You want me even now. That doesn't mean we're going to do anything. Outrage stiffened him against me. Are you refusing me? I did a slow shimmy that left us both breathless, not refusing outright, just delaying. Well, like, isn't she supposed to do something? Didn't he say, like, well, you have to do like this thing or whatever to be like officially a mate? So it's like, well, why is he making such a big deal of it? They're not like dragon married yet or whatever. It's supposed to happen. I don't know. Mm, mm, mm. Not refusing outright, just delaying. In fact, I need to be going back to sleep. I have a big day ahead of me tomorrow, one that involves making sure that you pay for the crimes you've committed. Oh. So you might want to get some rest too. I have a feeling you're going to need it. Is that a threat? His eyes were filled with so much emotion, they almost glowed green. A promise, I whispered against his lips. The music came to a reluctant stop as I twirled one last twirl around the leg he forced through mine. Then I backed away. I wasn't entirely sure that I could break off a dream that he had initiated, but I wasn't about to stay in this little nocturnal fantasy while he conducted an erotic third degree. Good night, Drake. Thank you for the dance and the slinky dress. Maybe another time we can do the rumba. This isn't over, Ashling. You're a fool if you think it is. You're crazy if you think I didn't notice that not once did he deny doing anything wrong. Part of me wanted to stay and argue it out with him, to try to reason with him, to make him admit what he'd done. Well, because you just like were kind of vague, just like crimes in general. It could have been like all that stealing that he's done in his life of all the gold he acquired. Oh, thank you. Oh, Rocket. Thank you. Amazing. You're terrible at reading and grammar. Well, you can write pretty well. I can read what you're saying. Don't be so hard on yourself. Uh, Part of me wanted to stay and argue it out with him, try to reason with him, to make him admit what he'd done, and wring a promise from him that he'd turn himself into the police. The other part was sounding warning bells and counseling me to run like crazy from him. Instead, I drifted backwards into the shadows, leaving him standing by himself in the light, a mysterious figure in black, his face haunted, his eyes dark with shadows. I would not fall in love with a murderer, no matter how much he wrung my heart. I woke with that resolution echoing in my head. The clock at the side of the bed showed it was only 2 in the morning. I beat up the pillow until it was somewhat comfortable, and I lay awake for a long time, thinking over what I had to do. An hour into my contemplation, Perdita crept into the room with a cone of cedar scented incense and conducted the ritual cleansing by the light of the moon. It was a strangely unsettling experience, one that left me wondering just how right things were in my head, that I suspected the two women who were risking their own safety by protecting me. All right, you and I are going to have a talk. Goody gumdrops, I'm slobbering at the thought. I pulled out a fresh drool bib that Ophelia had kindly purchased for me the day before and tied it around Jim's thick neck. We had done a quick walkies, quick because I was nervous about being on the streets where someone might recognize me, and yet hesitant to have either Ophelia or Perdita take the demon out for me, since they might find out it was a demon and had our breakfast with the sisters. Ophelia offered to run any of my errands as she was out doing her own, but I couldn't think of anything I needed until after she had left. She also asked that I wait to conduct my demon summoning ritual until after she returned, so she could watch. I gnashed my teeth a bit at the delay, wanting to get the demon's interrogation done so I could turn the information over to the police as soon as possible. But there wasn't much I could do. She and Perdita were taking a big risk by putting me up. Delaying the summoning of Bothamal for a few hours was the least I could do in return. I was being sarcastic rather than literal, Jim said snappishly as I tied on the drool bib. I wiped up its moist flews with the dirty bib. You don't have something caught in your teeth, do you? I heard that tooth problems can make a dog drool excessively. Maybe I should take you to a vet. You could brush my teeth instead. A good owner brushes her dog's teeth. Cecile says Emily brushes her teeth for her every night. She has a special dog toothbrush and everything. Some people care for their pets. I sat in the puddle of sunlight that was warming the edge of the bed. Stop trying to distract me. You are a demon, not a pet. I want to talk to you, and I command you to answer my question honestly. Jim muttered something mm, under its breath and looked away. What power does a guardian have other than taking care of portals and summoning and releasing demons? Whatever power she needs. That's no answer, I said with a frown. Jim pouted. It's the truth, and that's what you asked for. Why couldn't anyone in this city accept Emily offer information when I ask questions? I sighed and tried again. Give me a specific list of powers a guardian has other than the portal and demon stuff. She can draw wards and curses, can conduct mind pushes on mortals, depending on the level of her training, and can recognize otherworld entities, no matter what their disguises. That didn't hurt too much, did it? I asked as I thought over Jim's list. It muttered that it hurt a lot. Let's start at the top. Ward and curses. What are those? Words are magic in symbol form. Most, but not all, are used for protection. Curses are anti wards, drawn the same, but with the intention of doing an action to someone else rather than the drawer. Happy now? Nigh on ecstatic. What's a mind push? Jim sighed a throaty sigh. Remind me to make my next demon lord someone who knows his job. A mind push is just what it sounds like. You want someone to do something, you give them a little mind push to make them do it. Oh, something psychic like ESP and all that? Not the spoon bending kind. It's just you reaching out with your mind and convincing the other person they really want to do what it is you want them to do. Mind push. Get it? Got it. Kind of. Now, this recognizing beasties and such, you mean like demons? Jim nodded and started licking his shoulder. I frowned, going back over everyone I'd met since I summoned up Jim. If that's so common, why is it that both wyverns recognized that you were a demon, and yet Emily didn't until I told her? And for that matter, Ophelia and Perdita don't know what you really are either. Who said it was common? Only those mortals who have the ability to control the dark powers can recognize beings who originate in the other world. Same goes with those beings themselves, like the dragons. Ah, so Emily as a healer and O&P as Wiccans can't see you as you really are. Yes. Are you done with the questions? Because it's past time for my spit bath, and it's going to take me at least half an hour to take care of my package. Ew, ew, ew. My way out of the room and left him to his grooming. I spent a few minutes making up a list of things I need for the demon summoning in between watching Perdita as she puttered around on a good sized balcony. Most of the space was taken up by flower boxes and containers filled with various plants, herbs. She told me earlier as she walked by with a watering can. Finished already? She asked as she came in with a handful of something green and leafy. Someone with the power to command me to answer questions honestly. Well, I mean, you're not a demon, and I guess if you were, it'd only be your demon summoner, your owner. So, and actually answering honestly isn't so bad. Because you don't have to like keep track of shit. I nodded. I think I'm going to have to go out. I need a couple of books. And I know Emily has, as well as Dead Man's Ash. You're welcome to check our library, Perdita said as she rubbed a stalk of plant between her hands. I'm sure I saw some Dead Man's Ash in the workroom. Really? That was a surprise. I'd Thought I read somewhere that dead man's ash was only used in summoning ghosts and demons. Thanks. I'll go look. In a few minutes, after Jim was done with its groin washing. So when she said like, oh, that's a surprise. I thought it was only for ghosts and demons. That she only thought to herself. So she's like, Perdita set her bruised leaves in a wooden bowl. Dill, she explained, as I watched her crush them with a pestle. Something for lunch? I asked. She frowned. No, dill is a great protector against demons. I thought that as you were bringing one into the house, I would use it to protect every room but the workroom, just in case. Dill was a demon's bane? I thought briefly of Jim. How on earth was I going to explain my dog's sudden inability to leave my bedroom? How exactly does the dill protect you from a demon? Demons hate it, she answered, still grinding away with a pestle. They can't stand to be in the same room with it. The door to my bedroom, which I had left cracked so Jim wouldn't have to get the doorknob all slobbery, opened, and my demon on four legs strolled into the room, making a beeline to me as it dropped its leash at my feet. I watched closely for a moment, but Jim didn't seem to be disturbed by the dill Perdita was setting around the apartment in little pots. In fact, I doubt if it even noticed. So much for protection. I'll just go see if you have any dead man's ash, then be out of your hair for a little bit. Perdita made polite noises about not minding me underfoot. I shot Jim a warning look to behave himself and went back into my sunny bedroom, stopping in front of a glass fronted bookcase. There were a lot of Wiccan books, a couple of herbals, books on magic, books on the origins of witchcraft and the like. Nothing I can use, I said to Jim as it followed me back into the room, which doesn't surprise me because, it doesn't surprise you why? Jim asked, sharking the bed to rub itself along the edge of the mattress. Jim, I had discovered, loved to have its back scratched because they don't have anything to do with the dark arts. Is this what I think it is? I pulled out a tiny volume about the size of my palm that had been tucked behind a larger book, the Stenographia. Well, I'll be. Oh, yeah. Oh, that. Yeah, I saw that yesterday, Jim said, sounding bored as it continued sharking the bed. I thought you preferred the Liber Geratus. Isn't that what you used to call me? Yes, I said slowly, flipping through the book, but it's odd that Wiccans should have a book of this sort. Not if they had anything to do with the Venetiger, Jim said, still rubbing itself along the bed. Think you could get me a brush? I want to look my best if we're going to see Cecile. The Venetiger, I'd almost forgotten that Perdita worked for him. Of course, if she worked for him, she must have had some skills with the dark powers, don't you think? Hence the Stenographia. What I think is that I need brushing, Jim said pointedly. Mm, mm. I just keep thinking, I just keep wanting to be like, get out of the house. Get out of that house. Like, obviously, you can't trust these people. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Too many awareness, but I guess if you want to find out, you should be there. But face your fears, discover your power. Mm, Oh, yeah, I suppose you do. You're looking a bit ratty. I slid the book back into its spot and make a quick check of the shelving holding the various pots of herbs and such. No dead man's ash. Come on, I said, snapping on Jim's leash and grabbing my purse. Let's make this fast. The least amount of time I have to spend out on the streets, the happier I'll be. Call Renee, Jim suggested. I was about to say I wouldn't bother Renee for something so trivial, but rethought my strategy. With Renee serving as my driver, he'd keep his eye peeled for the police. That was assuming he'd want to drive a fugitive around Paris while she did her shopping. Maybe I shouldn't get him involved. Are you kidding? He'd love it, Jim said softly as I opened the door. I signaled for it to be quiet, then pulled Renee's card out, explaining quickly to Perdita that I was going to use a friend to drive me around. I watched her out of the corner of my eye as I dialed the number, wondering just how deep in the Venetigers' business she had become. A Wiccan who had a well-used copy of the Stenographia was definitely an oxymoron, kind of like a guardian who was also a demon lord. 15 minutes later, Jim and I descended the stairs, peering up and down the street for signs the apartment was being watched before dashing into Renee's waiting taxi. Bonjour, I said breathlessly, grunting when Jim jumped into the taxi and landed on me. Get off me. Sorry. Renee twisted around in his seat and glared at me. Before we go, I must first lecture you. Um, you said on the phone you did not wish to derange me if I believed those stories in the paper about you. Me, I am offended you would think that. I fluttered a hand at the window. Renee, I'm sorry. The last thing I want to do is offend you, but I wanted to give you an out if you were uncomfortable with the thought of driving around someone who is wanted by the police. Renee snorted. You do not have faith in me, eh? I have a lot of faith. I just don't want you getting involved in something that you'll regret. He made a rude gesture out the window at the person behind us who was yelling at him, turning to face the front. Quand les paus auront des dents. Huh? He put his foot on the gas. I clutched Jim as we were thrown backwards. It means when female chickens have teeth. It is your phrase for today, but it also expresses what I think of your so foolish worry. Evidently, I was forgiven if he was giving me another phrase to wield during my time in France. I smiled, and while we drove to the Latin Quarter, gave him the latest on what had been happening since I last saw him. It is good you called me. I will watch with eyes most vigilant to be sure the police do not see you. Renee told me as I dragged an unwilling Jim out of a pet shop we'd stopped at to get a brush. Jim decided any store that had big open bins of dog cookies was more or less heaven, and had to be forcibly convinced to vacate the premises. We will serve the reconnaissance on the Rue Ebullitions, sur les fesses de diable. If we see the police, hein, we will leave. If not, I will drop you off and park down the street. Yes? Sounds like a plan. I agreed. And that's exactly what we did. Renee drove up and down Emily Street a couple of times, but we didn't see any police cars or strange men across from her shop who appeared to be reading newspapers, or women stopped in front, fussing with a baby carriage, or anything of the other many ruses cops take when on stakeout. There were a lot of people on the street, but none of them were loitering. It was nearing midday, and people were hurrying along to the shops or for an early lunch. Renee let me out about a block away, following slowly behind as I strolled up and down the street, watching for anyone who might be interested in me. On my third stroll past Emily's shop, he gave me the all clear symbol and zoomed off to our rendezvous place a couple of blocks away. Operation Emily is go, I told Jim quietly as I turned on my heel and headed back for Les Grimoires Toxiques. As I approached the door to the shop, I did a final scan of the street, but no one was paying the least amount of attention to us. Phew, looks like for once luck is with us. I pushed the door open and walked right into Inspector Proust. Up, up, chapter 16. Ugh. Well, isn't he investigating? Probably would expect to see him now. Mm. Mm. Pardon me. Oh, holy mare day, I said, getting a good look at whom I had careened into. For a moment, I just stood in stunned surprise. Then my fight or flight instincts kicked in and I turned to run. Inspector Proust's hand clamped down on my arm, stopping me dead in the door. Millie Gray, what a pleasant surprise. I was just having a little chat with Mame Merlane about you. Madame declared that she had no idea of when you might stop by her shop, and yet here you are. How very timely your visit is. My heart sank into my shoes again as I turned back to face him, flexing my arm experimentally. His grip wasn't painful, but it was extremely solid. There was no way I could get away from him unless I ordered Jim to attack, and I hesitated doing that, not only because it wouldn't look good for Emily, but also because despite the fact that he wanted me in jail, I kind of liked Inspector Proust. At the very least, he was honest with me. Emily was telling the truth, I said, briefly allowing my eyes to meet hers as she stood looking very worried behind Inspector Proust. She knows nothing about my plans. I suppose you want to have a chat with me too. That would be most agreeable, he said, gesturing toward the door with his free hand. Somehow I doubted if agreeable would be a description that I would use. I shot a warning look to Jim as we left the store. He raised his eyebrows but kept silent. I'm innocent, you know, I said in a conversational tone as Inspector Proust walked me down the sidewalk in the opposite direction of where Renee was waiting for us. I figured I had a minute at best before he marched me into official custody. Now was as good a time as any to fill him in on a few facts. I didn't kill the manager any more than I killed Mamie Deville, and you yourself admitted I didn't kill her. I do, however, know who did kill both of them, and I'm in the process of gathering proof you can use to convict the murderer. It is the job of the police to gather proof, mademoiselle, not you. I will be glad, it is true, to hear your thoughts on the matter. I am most interested in what you have to say about your adventures at M. Camus's house. He cocked his head as he glanced at me. It was you who set fire to the gazebo, was it not? Yes, but that was an accident. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just a little careless with matches. I pulled on my arm. He didn't loosen his hold at all. I kept he just kept walking me down the street, Jim trailing behind us. I chewed on my lip for a moment, remembering what Jim had said earlier. Of all the powers of guardian. Oh, thank you, Jerry. It's sparkling. I hope you can see the sparkle. It really is very, very sparkling in person. I mean, in the mirror, it looked like it, but anything. I could do pictures. Of all the powers a guardian had, there was only one that could do me any good in this situation. If I could figure out how to do a mind push on Inspector Proust, I might be able to get away from him and make it back to Renee. I glanced at Inspector Proust from the corner of my eye. He lifted his free hand and gestured to someone, probably his driver. Parked down the street. It was now or never. You want to let me go, don't you? He looked at me, clearly startled by my statement. I beg your pardon. I curled my fingers into fists and opened the door in my head, ignoring the embers of Drake's fire that's always seemed to be there. Instead, picturing Inspector Prouse releasing my arm. You want to let me go. You don't want to hold on to me. You know I'm innocent, so there's no reason why I should not just walk away. His brown eyes looked a bit weary. Mademoiselle, are you unwell? I took a deep breath, held the mental picture of Inspector Prouse releasing me, and infusing my words with as much of my will as I could muster. Let me go. Something gave. A barrier that was there, then was gone. And with its absence, the pressure of Inspector Prouse's hand on my arm also disappeared. I looked down, surprised the mind push worked. He wasn't holding on to me. I took a step away, glancing up at him. His eyes were a bit flat, as if he were thinking some deep thoughts. Ahead of me, a car approached. I took a few more steps away from Inspector Proust. He didn't even blink. It works, I breathed as I yanked on Jim's leash. I didn't have to yank twice as the unmarked police car zoomed up and stopped next to Inspector Proust. We walked away quickly, half expecting either the inspector or his driver to yell at us, but neither did. The driver must not have realized his boss had me in custody. Hot damn, it works. I can mind push. Now, this is a skill I can use. No more speeding tickets, no more waiting for a table in a restaurant, at least, as at long last, something practical. Doesn't work on dragons, only mortals, Jim said. We can't have everything, I answered as I turned the corner, intending on doubling back to dash into Emily's shop, just long enough to grab a copy of the book I needed. Why do you mention dragons particularly? Signora Gray, Rinaldo said, hopping out of a parked car to stand in front of me. Il Drago Blue wishes to have a few words with you. That's why, Jim said. I smacked it on the shoulder. You couldn't have just said, Hey, Ashlyn, there are dragons sitting in a car over there. Il Drago wishes for you to come with us now, Signora. Rinaldo said in a louder, more aggressive voice. I didn't even try a mind push, not with Jim's half-assed warning fresh in my ears. Instead, I jerked the gold chain with my jade dragon talisman over my head, yanking the talisman off the chain. Look, gold! I waved the gold chain in front of Ronaldo's face, eyes brightening as he watched the chain sway. When I was sure he was about to lunge at it, I threw it hard as I could over his head. Go get it! Unable to resist the lure of treasure, gold, I had discovered, generating an almost visceral reaction in dragons, Ronaldo spun around and jumped for the chain. I ran in the other direction, down the street toward Emily's, past Inspector Proust, who was still standing on the sidewalk looking distracted, this time with his driver waving a hand in front of his face. The driver didn't even glance at me as Jim and I raced past. I was almost at Emily's door when two familiar figures ahead of me crossed the street to my side of the road, heading right for me. It was Pal and Esteban. What? Everyone knows I'm here? I grumbled as I thought quickly. Behind me, Ronaldo was stuffing the gold chain into his pocket as he walked quickly toward me, giving Inspector Prouse and his driver, who was now shaking the inspector, a wide berth. Ahead of me, Pal and Istvan marched toward me with familiar grim looks on their faces. Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. I decided Drake's men were the least of my worries and beckoned to them, pointing behind me as I yelled, "The Blue Wyvern's man is trying to kidnap me so he can use me against Drake." Drake's red-haired duo stiffened at my words, both their gazes going over my shoulder to where Ronaldo was, bearing determinedly down on me. Ronaldo saw them at the same time and paused. "He has gold," I added persuasively. It was all the urging Pal and Ispan needed. They sprinted past me, their eyes lit with pleasure. Ronaldo stood still, for a moment, then he turned on his heels and ran for it. I shoved Jim into Emily's shop, following quickly after the demon. I had no idea how long Inspector Prouse would stay mind pushed, or how long the dragons would take to realize that I had tricked them, but I wasn't planning on waiting around to see. "Hi, Emily. I'm sorry about all this, but do you have a copy of— Oh, bloody hell, that's all I need. What the devil are you doing here?" A shadow fell at my feet as Drake loomed up in Amelia's doorway behind me. He must have been following Paul and Istvan, although I hadn't seen him. I turned back to Emily, unsnapping Jim's leash as I asked, "Do you have a back exit?" "Yes," she said simply, and nodded toward the bead curtain that separated the public part of the shop from the back. "Jim, attack!" I said, pointing behind me. Drake opened his mouth to say something, but Jim, for once, decided to obey me without argument and sprang at Drake before he could speak. They went down in a solid thud of tangled legs and black fur. I bolted toward the beaded curtain, jumping over cartons of books, heading for the door painted with a blue pentagram. I was through it and halfway down the alley that ran behind the building before I realized that Jim wasn't on my heels. I stopped, hesitating, unsure of whether I should risk going back for it or trusting that Jim would take care of itself. "Damn it," I swore as I turned my back on the shop and continued to run toward the parking lot 2 blocks away, telling myself that the probability of Jim's survival was far greater than mine if I went back. A few tears snaked down my cheeks, making me angrier still at myself. Jim might not be able to be killed, but its doggy form could be destroyed. I wiped at my cheeks, spinning around the corner of a cafe to the busy parking lot that butted up against it. Renee was leaning against the hood of his car, reading a newspaper. I yelled and waved my arm as I bolted into the parking lot. He evidently got the message, because he didn't wait for me to explain. He just jumped into the car and pulled out of his spot, stopping long enough for me to throw myself into the front seat next to him before he burned rubber getting us out of there. "Where is the little devil dog?" he asked as I slammed into the car door with the force of a highly illegal and completely death defying hairpin U turn. I wiped angrily at the tears still streaming down my face. I told Jim to attack Drake, but he must have done something to poor Jim because otherwise it would have been on my heels. It's not normally very big on heroics. The thought of Jim being harmed by Drake made my tears flow faster. What sort of a coward was I that I would so quickly abandon Jim like that? It was following my command faithfully. Jim might be just a demon, but it was my demon. Drake was there, Renee whistled. We will make a dashing escape right now. Turn around, I ordered, pulling up the hem of my skirt to mop up my face. Renee looked at me like I had frogs in my bidet. What? Turn around, we're going back. I can't leave Jim to Drake's mercy. Drake has no mercy. He'll torment Jim. I just know it. Renee slowed the taxi, but didn't turn around. Your bell is being rung, he said. I sniffed and shot him a frown. I what? He gestured a circle on his temple. Your bell is being rung. You're not thinking right. Oh, I'm crazy? Yeah, I know, but I'm learning to live with it. Turn around, please. I have to get Jim. Renee complied, but not without several comments about the immense lack of wisdom I was showing. It is a little devil. You said yourself it cannot be hurt. That doesn't mean Drake won't make Jim suffer, and no one torments my demon but me. It's a rule I have. Stop here. I'll slip in the back way. I will drive around the block. You will wait for me here, yes? Renee asked as he pulled up at the end of the alley. We both peered around. No one was visible. Yes, I got out of the car, leaning in through the open window to give him instructions. 5 minutes. If I don't come out, go home. You won't be able to help me. Renee gunned the engine. I pulled back as he waved. Me, I do not abandon my friends, just like you, eh? He was off before I could warn him not to hang around. I slunk down the alley to Emily's door and used my trusty credit card to get in the locked door, making my way silently through the back room to the curtain of bed beads. Emily stood at the open front door, looking out. There was no one else in the shop. She turned when I whispered her name. Ashling, she gasped, closing the door quickly. I slid through the beads. Where's Jim? Did Drake take it? What did he do to it? Oh, Lord, I never should have left Jim alone with him. Calm yourself. Your demon was not injured, Emily said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. You must leave. It is not safe for you here. Drake and two of the green dragons are just outside. Inspector Pross is out there too, although he appears to be in some sort of a daze. Oi, I said, backing through the bead curtain. Where's Jim? It ran off. Where? I do not know. I assumed it would follow you. Here, you will need this. Drake left it for you. Thanks, I said, snatching the dragon talisman she tossed to me, quickly making my way around the boxes to the back door. If you happen to see Jim, would you tell it to come home? It knows where we live. And thanks for everything else, too. I didn't wait around to hear anything else. I was at the end of the alley just as Renee came roaring around the corner. M. Drake, he is in the street speaking to two men in suits, Renee said. As soon as I opened the car door, I got in. Renee taking off even before I could close the door properly. They are the police. I know they are. They have the look of police. We must get you out of here immediately. I slumped back in the seat, worried, depressed, angry, and irritated at the sense of loss that I connected with Drake's sudden appearance. I stared out at the streets, watching for any sign of a big, lost Newfoundland. Renee shot me a questioning look when I didn't respond to a comment about Jim, finally settling back to drive me to Ophelia and Perdita's apartment without further demands for conversation. I sent up a little prayer that Jim would have the common sense to return to the apartment as well. If it didn't, I shook my head wearily. I didn't want to think of what trouble my demon could get into without me to keep an eye on it. Call me stupid, but I miss the big galoops. I'm sorry you lost your dog, Ashling. Would you like me to ring up the animal control people? They will let you know if they find Jim. No, it's okay, I told a sympathetic Ophelia. I had returned home to find that Jim hadn't found its way back yet, but that was no surprise. I was in a taxi, and poor Jim was hoofing it. But Jim can read the phone book, right? He can read. He can figure it out. Ugh, I miss Jim too. It's reminding me of Fila. 3 hours later, however, I had paced every square inch of the apartment, no doubt driving both Ophelia and Perdita nuts. Although both were too polite to tell me, I felt awful, not just guilty about leaving Jim to fend for itself, but physically drained and depressed, as if a horrible black cloud hanging over my head was leaching into my body. The apartment, at first so bright and lovely, was now oppressive and bleak, a prison rather than a haven. Perdita and Ophelia had offered to search the streets for Jim, but I knew that wasn't necessary. Jim was a smart demon. If it was at all possible for it to make its way home, it would. I just feel so helpless, I said, stopping before Ophelia to fret, trying to push down the rising sense of panic laden despair. Poor Jim is out there all by himself, facing who knows what horrors. Maybe he's picked up by vivisectionists. Maybe someone will do 101 Dalmatians on him. Mm. I paced past Perdita as she chopped up mushrooms for dinner. 101 Dalmatians? Ophelia asked, her in a quiet voice. Skins, Perdita answered succinctly. I waved my hands around, dread filling my mind at the very horrible things that could be happening to Jim at the very moment. Exactly. Jim has a lovely coat. Someone might want him for it. Or oh, I don't know, something awful. Someone might want to use him as a stud dog, ruthlessly breeding him again and again and again. Although, to be honest, he probably wouldn't object to that too much. But damn it, he's my dog. He doesn't get to have fun unless I say he does. Ophelia set some apples and cinnamon to simmer, coming around the long marble counter that separated the dining area from the kitchen. She patted my head, but it didn't make me feel any better. In fact, I felt worse. Almost sick to my stomach with worry. Ashlyn, if there's anything Purdy and I can do, any spell we could perform, you have but to ask. I swallowed back a lump of unshed tears and tried for a smile. Thank you, Ophelia. That's very generous of you, but I'm afraid spells, well, just they would be a waste of time. I had a feeling that if Perdita's dill was such a failure as an anti-demon protection, their herb-based spells would be ineffective as well. I'll just have to hope that he's lying low for a while until it's safe to come home. She patted my arm. You're distraught. Perhaps it would be best if you didn't conduct your demon ritual tonight. You can't focus if you're so upset. And didn't you say you needed a special book? Oh, that's right. I'll use Perdita's. It's a bit different from the one I'm familiar with, but I'm sure it will be okay. You don't mind if I use your book, do you? I asked, desperately trying to distract myself with trivialities. Perdita opened her mouth to say something, but a quick look at Ophelia left her shaking her head. No, please use the book. I don't mind at all. I squashed down all the worry and sick fear and a horrible sense of dread and ordered my mind to focus on what was important. There's no time like the present. If you both are free, I'll just go in and raise my demon, ask it a few questions, and send it back. Do either of you have a tape recorder? Better than that, we have a digital video camera, Ophelia said, running for a closet. We'll film your demon. Oh, this is exciting. That would be wonderful, I said in a voice that dripped unease.
The two sisters followed me into the bedroom, newly cleansed and sadly gymless. I took the stenographia from the shelves and thumbed through it. I was vaguely familiar with the book, having read the translation and decoding part of the book had been written in a numeral code a couple of years ago. I found the demon lord symbols and sat down to draw a circle of ash made by paper I had burned earlier. I have no idea if this will work or not without the proper equipment. I warned both women. Ophelia sat on the bed behind me, filming me as I drew the circle. Widdershins with salt. I stopped halfway around the circle, almost overwhelmed with despair that welled up from deep within my heart. Why was I bothering? Why was I wasting my time? I just embarrassed myself in front of Ophelia and Perdita when I couldn't summon Bothamal. They'd know I was a fake, a liar, someone who couldn't even perform a simple delivery without messing it up. I failed in that just as I failed Jim. Even Drake was disgusted with me. I fought back a sob and finished the circle, arguing with myself the whole while I traced the 12 symbols of Ashtaroth. By the time I had done the 6 symbols for Baphomet, I was very close to just rolling myself up into a ball and indulging in hysterical tears. Only the steady red light blinking on Ophelia's digital recorder kept me from giving in. I pricked my finger with a pin Perdita gave me, then closed the circle with my blood. Nothing happened. There was no sense of thickening air, as there was when I had summoned Jim. There was no tingle when I passed my hand over the circle. It was just a circle. I frowned, consulting Perdita's book, trying to recall everything I had done with Jim. Is something the matter? Ophelia asked from behind me. No, I guess not, I said, closing the book. I had done everything the same. Maybe the difference was because Asheroth was a different lord than Jim's former one? I shrugged, too upset and dispirited to care very much. I stood and called the quarters, aware not of the sense of something waiting to be called forth, but instead a dread seemed to press in on me from all sides. I conjure thee, Baphomet, by the power of thy lord Ashtaroth, also called the keeper of the hoard, to appear before me now without noise and terror. I summon thee, Baphomet, to answer truly all questions that I shall ask thee. I command thee, Baphomet, to my will, by the virtue of my power. By my hand thy shall be bound, by my blood thy shall be bound, by my voice thy shall be bound. 1 second the circle was empty. The next, a handsome blonde demon stood within it, watching me with a speculative gaze in his smoky gray eyes. Baphomet had arrived. So I guess it worked. Chapter 17. Yeah, Cruella de Vil. Which is such a cool Halloween costume. I feel like I could be a dancer, like dancing with the stars with this costume on. Twirl me. All right, chapter 17. The demon had changed clothes from the last time I'd seen it. Now it was wearing scarlet pleated pants with a bright yellow shirt and azure tie. Very chic, very primary colors. Ever the fashion plate I see, I said, taking a step back. It smiled and made me a little bow. You called me, oh master. I staggered over to a chair. The despair swamping me increased with the presence of Baphomet, draining me physically until I felt like a well-wrung limp rag. Behind me, Ophelia and Perdita stood, but I couldn't spare them even a glance. I had a horrible feeling that if I didn't keep my attention focused on the demon, it would break free of my control. Baphomet, I command thee to answer my questions. Were you at the mortal Aurora Deville's house when she was killed? The demon smiled. I had that pleasure. Were you there at the behest of the person who killed her? I was. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're getting somewhere. My shoulders slumped. Were you the tool for the death of Aurora Deville? Fatima rubbed its hands, the open enjoyment on its face making my nausea increase. I clutched my stomach, fighting the urge to vomit. Not the death, no. I strung the mortal up, though. That was fun. My stomach lurched. I gritted my teeth. Were you present at the house of the mage named Albert Camus? Yes. Were you there at the request of the person who killed him? None other. Were you the instrument of Albert Camus's death? No. I heard you set fire to him later. Classy style you have, guardian. Behind me, Ophelia gasped. I ignored the demon's attempt at provocation, fighting wave after wave of nausea. My voice cracked as I asked, who summoned you, Baphomet? The demon's grin grew wider. Drake Vireo, the green wyvern. Up. My heart turned to stone, fracturing into a million pieces. I knew Drake was guilty. I had ever since I found Baphomet lounging around in his house. But to hear the confirmation of it destroyed a part of me I hadn't known existed. Blackness swam before me. I clutched the arms of the chair and forced myself to breathe slowly. If I passed out, I lose control of the demon. And who knew what horrors that would unleash? Who killed Aurora Deville? Drake Vireo. Pain stabbed through me. I turned my mind from it. Who killed Albert Camus? Drake Vireo. Wetness streaked my cheeks. You're calling bull. You lie-ass demon. I lifted my hand to brush away the tears and found my fingers stained red. I was weeping blood. Who ordered you to hang both Aurora and Albert? Drake Vireo, the demon answered gleefully. Why? I asked, my voice sounding like two rocks rubbed together. My mouth was so dry I could hardly swallow. Why did Drake summon you? He needed my help to conduct the murders and escape undetected. I closed my eyes and swayed, desperately trying to hang on to consciousness. What does Drake intend to do with the tools of Baal? Behind me, something glass crashed to the floor. I hoped it was the small bud vase that was next to Perdita, rather than the video camera. Baphomet buffed its fingernails on its shiny yellow shirt. He wants to rule the mortal world, of course. It was enough. I couldn't stand it anymore. With each word, another piece of my soul was torn from me. I gritted my teeth and drew the symbols of evanescence. The demon didn't say anything, just grinned as I spoke the words that would disperse it back to its origin. With the final command, its figure blinked out as if a plug had been pulled. I can't. Without looking at the sisters, I leaped to my feet and raced for the bathroom, just barely making it to the toilet before losing my lunch. When I returned, Ophelia was standing before Perdita, her hand on her sister's. Please, Purdy, please don't do it. It's wrong. You know it's wrong. You know well the penalty demanded of those who call upon the dark masters. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, what is she going to do? I'm sorry, Ophelia, but I have to. The tools of Baal are not to be used lightly. I can't allow Drake. A movement of awareness by Ophelia stopped Perdita from finishing her sentence. Aisling, are you all right? Ophelia came forward, her hands outstretched. You poor dear, what a horrible experience you had. Did you know it was your mate who killed the Venetiger? and the other woman before the demon I told you? I looked past her to where Perdita stood, her face grim. What can't you allow Drake to do? Perdita started to say something, shot her sister an unreadable glance, and then shook her head. I must leave now. I'm late. I have to open G&T. I will. She paused at the door, looking back at us. Ophelia moved to stand close to me, a comforting hand on my arm. Perdita's eyes were hard and determined as she looked at us. I will speak with you later about this. I wasn't sure which one of us her words were meant for, but before I could ask, she left the room. Ophelia's hands fluttered at her sister's back as she left. You'll have to excuse Purdy. She has been under a great deal of strain since the Benediger was killed, and she was, well, to be honest, she and Drake Virio were friends before you came. Friends? I blinked a couple of times while the emphasis she placed on the word sank into my fuzzy brain. Oh, you mean friends. I didn't know. I'm like, wait, what? I mean, Perdita could have told her. I'm sorry. That was tactless of me to blurt it out like that. I just wanted you to understand why Purdy is so upset. I waved her apology away, rubbing the back of my neck as I sank onto the bed. The feeling of sickness and despair still clung to me, but it had lessened with the demon's disappearance. It's all right. Drake might think I'm his mate, but it doesn't mean I have to accept that role, and we're not together. She looked relieved. I scooted up mm, until my back was against the wall. To answer your question, yes, I knew Drake was responsible for the deaths. I found Baphomet at his house. I knew there could only be one reason the demon was there. It was just a bit of a shock having it confirmed. Ophelia curled up next to me. I closed my eyes, the nausea still holding me in its gut-wrenching grip. How horrible for you to be deceived by a man you are so bound to. What are you going to do now? I rubbed my head. A headache was blossoming to life, making it difficult to think clearly. I had planned to take whatever evidence the demon provided to the police, but now I'm not so sure. There was nothing it said that I could offer as proof positive, but if I tried to explain to Inspector Prowse just who Baphomet was, he'd lock me away in the loony bin. Perhaps if you watch the video, something will occur to you, she offered, setting the video camera next to me. I must go and make sure Purdy is all right, but then you and I will brainstorm a solution to this problem. There must be a way we can make the police understand just who is behind these murders. I thanked her, lying quiet for a few minutes until I felt like I could move without my head splitting open or vomiting again. I sat up and flipped on the video camera, wincing when the demon's voice came out just as loud as if it stood before me. Who killed Aurora Duville? Drake Virio. I watched the recording all the way through, then stopped it and thought about everything the demon had said. There was something that it mentioned that bothered me, something that was raising a red flag, but my tired, aching brain couldn't pin it down. Well, she's off, Ophelia said 15 minutes later as she dragged the armchair over to the bed. She's very upset, but determined to keep the G&T open until the Benediger's will is read next Monday. He promised to leave it to her, as a mark of his respect and an acknowledgement of his debt to her. His debt? Purdy has worked for him for almost a year. She's a very powerful Wiccan, and she has done much to teach him of the goddess's power. I rubbed my forehead. The headache was increasing in its intensity. Now I really am confused and not too proud to admit it. I thought the Benediger was a mage. She nodded. Isn't a mage some sort of a magician? A wizard? Wouldn't that mean he knew magic? A frown creased her brow. Do you not have any mages where you are from? I made a half-shrugging motion that committed me to no particular answer. I thought they were everywhere, but I guess not. A mage does indeed know magic. He's a master wizard, in fact, but it's dark magic that he practices. You might have gathered that Purdy and I feel strongly that it's our duty to spread the word about the goddess's love to those who make use of the dark powers. I made a little grimacing mew. I had been on the receiving end of Perdita's lectures about the power of Wicca more than once in the last 24 hours, and she felt particularly that the Venetiger could be turned from his path of destruction if only he would embrace the red. But he didn't, I said. No, and it was only last week that she finally admitted that nothing would turn him from the dark path. That's part of the reason why she feels so bad. She had intended on resigning her position, feeling it was wrong to stay working for him when he embodied everything we hold abhorrent. But now she feels she has to stay on, at least until a new Benediger appears. I closed my mouth from where it had been hanging open, trying to at least appear as if I had a few wits left. The Benediger is a it's a position within the underworld, yes. You don't have them? No, you wouldn't. Not in the States. Everything there is a democracy. She smiled. Here we stay with the old ways. The Venetiger is a position of power, a person who controls the other world of each country. Sounds kind of like a paranormal mafia. She didn't laugh as I expected her to. Instead, she looked troubled. I'm afraid that's an accurate comparison. The Venetiger, the one who died, long held France in his grip. No one challenged him because of the power he held. Those who were foolish enough to cross him once never did so a second time. It was a virtual dictatorship. Our only hope of avoiding the same fate is if the next Benediger will be one of our own. I couldn't keep my surprise from showing at that comment. A Wiccan? A Wiccan can be a Benediger? She nodded. Female Benedigers aren't common, but they aren't unknown. All that is needed to acquire the title is the ability to beat the other aspirants. How many people are there who are likely to try for the job? I asked, wondering if Perdita had wanted the Benediger gone not because of his history with Baal, but because she wanted his position. But that was stupid. Drake killed the Benediger. Baphomet admitted as much. Right now, there are few people in France who have the power needed to control the other world. The wyverns are powerful, I said slowly, my mind twisting and turning as it tried to work through a convoluted thought. Yes, but they are too bound to their steps to ever become a Benediger. Does Perdita? I hesitated, unwilling to put my thoughts into words. I didn't want to offend Ophelia with my question, but I had to know the truth, all of it. Does Perdita have the power to become the next Benediger? Purdy? Ophelia's nose scrunched as she thought about the question. I suppose she does. She's a very powerful Wiccan. Oh, her eyes went round as she clutched my hand. You don't think she intends to do it, do you? Become the Venetiger? I hadn't thought she would, but you may be onto something. It is just the sort of challenge she would enjoy. She might just do it. Every bell and siren that composed my mental warning system went into red alert double overtime. Ophelia's innocent act rang false, completely false. The question was, why did she want me to think Perdita hadn't considered the job of Benediger? The answer to that was easy. She had to know I was beginning to suspect Perdita's motives. She would naturally be expected to cover up the acts of a dearly beloved sister. And with that thought, a light clicked on in my head. I saw it all, saw the whole plan, each jigsaw piece of it fitting smoothly into the next. All those knowing looks between the two of them, Perdita's copy of the Stenographia, Perdita's lectures about people who tapped into the dark powers, Ophelia telling me that Perdita had had a relationship with Drake. It all came into focus as I sat watching Ophelia wring her hands with pretend worry. even the vague something that bothered me in watching the video of Baphomet dropped into place. Drake had told me that dragons couldn't summon demons. He might have been lying, but thinking back, I was of the mind he had been telling the truth. That meant that someone else had to have summoned Baphomet. Ophelia prattled on about how wonderful it would be with a Wiccan in charge, while I wondered idly if she knew that I was familiar with the fact that a dragon couldn't summon a servant of Abaddon. What are you going to do? I started, drawn out of my own dark musing by her question. About Drake. She nodded. I leaned back against the wall, wrapping my arms around my knees. I knew what the solution to the problem of the murders was, but as yet I had no idea how to prove it. I suppose I'm going to have it out with him. She sucked her breath in, her blue eyes wide with surprise, and perhaps a smidgen of pleasure. A challenge? You're going to issue a challenge to him? I nodded. Challenge was a good word for what I wanted to do. How exciting! I've never seen a wyvern challenged. Yes, well, there's a first time for everything. A challenge might suit very well. I slid a glance her way. It will allow me to reveal the truth. The truth is good, she said with a righteous nod. I do hope I can help you. May I be your second? Gertie won't approve, but you are my friend. I can't turn my back on you when you're about to undertake something so terrifying as challenging a wyvern. A tiny frown grew until my brows were pulled together, the awful suspicion bouncing around my head that there might be something more to a challenge than I had supposed. She jumped up from the chair, turning to the cabinet of supplies. I must cast a spell of clarity over you, or no, perhaps one of protection would be best. Protection, I asked, getting a bit more worried. No one has ever challenged a wyvern and lived, she tossed over her shoulder as she rustled around the shelves. Protection would be best, although clarity. Oh, why can't Purdy be here to help me? She would know what to do. Um, she turned around, her arms full of jars of herbs, candles, and other supplies. I'll just whip something up for you, just as soon as we return from G&T. We're going to G&T? I asked, now seriously worried and moving straight into panic land. What exactly did you mean no one has ever challenged a wyvern and lived? You were talking about something a long time ago, right? Hundreds of years ago? Goddess, no. Just last year, someone challenged one of the wyverns. I believe it was Drake, although I was visiting my mother at the time. Purdy would know. She was still living with Drake then. One of the German mages accused him of stealing a very valuable ring and challenged him. Drake killed the mage, of course. He did? I squeaked. She set her things down on the table next to the bookcase. That is the way of dragons. It's one of the reasons Purdy and I have wanted the Venenator to see the true path. So he would put his foot down about the violence that seems to follow the dragons. She drifted toward the door, her hands doing the usual graceful flutter that accompanied her conversation. I'll just go get changed. Will you be ready in 20 minutes or so? I nodded, too dumbstruck to speak. Drake killed a man who challenged him. I stood up slowly and walked to the wardrobe, opening it to look at the face that stared out of the mirror hung on the inside door. My lips stretched into a suitably grim smile. Out of the frying pan, Ashling, and into the fire again. Are you sure this is a good idea? Inspector Proust closed the club down once. What if he comes back? Purdy won't allow him entrance, Ophelia said, flipping a clump of her golden ringlets over her shoulder. Come, despite my insecurity at the situation, she spoke in a comforting tone of voice as we stood at the top of the 3 steps that led down to the club proper. Mhm. Mm, I looked behind us at the door that led to the street. There was no doorman, not even a bouncer in attendance. How could she keep him from coming in? Wards, Ophelia said, tugging my arm as she descended into the club. Didn't you feel them when you came in? Come on, we'll get a table and have Purdy help us with the wording of your challenge. I looked around the club as I obediently followed Ophelia. It looked the same as the last time I was there. Smoky, crowded, music pulsing at almost a subconscious level. It was also wyvernless. Well, almost. Kyra, Fiat cried as a group of people between us parted. I had hoped that I would find you here. Ophelia stopped and glanced back at me curiously. I made brief introductions. A word of warning, Fiat. If you or any of your goon squad even looks like you're thinking of abducting me, I will scream bloody murder. I know for a fact that G&T is a neutral territory, and anyone who violates that neutrality will be in very hot water. First, Fiat laughed, his blue eyes unreadable. Ah, Karen, you have such fire. You truly are worthy of being a wyvern's mate. Drake doesn't deserve you. No, he doesn't, I said dryly. As for violating the rules of G&T, he smiled. Who is there to stop me from doing whatever I desire with you? The Venenator is dead. No one has claimed his title. We will stop you, Ophelia said suddenly, pushing her away in front of me. Ashley is my friend. Purdy and I will stop you from harming her. Fiat dismissed Ophelia's declaration. With a flicker of his eyes, he lifted my chin with one cool finger, taking a long moment to study my face. So determined, so forceful, but still mortal. She might be mortal, but she is challenging Drake Virio, Ophelia trumpeted. It is not everyone who has the courage to do so. As it had the night I had called Drake Puff the Magic Dragon, the entire room went silent. Respect dawned on Fiat's eyes as he considered me. So, the Guardian plans to challenge her mate for control of the set. No, I said quickly, shaking my head to add emphasis. It's not like that. Yes, she is, Ophelia cut in, waving a hand at me to shut up. She will challenge him, and when he fails, she will rule in his place. But I don't want. Yes, you do, she whispered, turning so Fiat couldn't hear what she was saying. That's how a challenge is conducted. Ostensibly, it's for control of the set, but the loser must abide by whatever terms the winner sets. If you make one of the terms that Drake must turn himself into the police, he will have to do so when you beat him. If I beat him, I pointed out. She waved that away. You will triumph. You will have me and Purdy in your corner. I watched as she turned back to Fiat, wondering if I should tell her that I knew the truth about her twin. We are about to formalize the terms of the challenge, if you will excuse us, Ophelia said with lofty arrogance, pushing Fiat aside to stride toward the back of the club. I will see you later, Kara, Fiat said, imbuing the words with a dark promise that was echoed in his eyes. Not if I see you first, I murmured, weary of outright insulting him. I was beginning to see the folly in tweaking a dragon's tail. This way, Purdy's office is in the back. Ophelia was waiting for me at the entrance to a dark hall that led to the bathrooms. We walked past the bathrooms, turned a corner, and headed for the two leather-studded doors that opened off to either side of the hallway. One of the doors bore black and yellow crime scene tape. That's the Benediger's office. Purdy said the police have sealed it, but she has the Benediger solicitor working on releasing the business papers to her, Ophelia said, nodding to the door on the right. She opened the door opposite. This is Purdy's office. It's smaller, but it's God is above. No. I looked at the body hanging in the center of the room. abstractly noting the fact that whoever killed Perdita had used a rough rope as the binding that tied her feet and hands together behind her back. Her body was suspended sideways in midair. The same rough rope wrapped around her waist several times before it was attached to a hook in the black beam that crossed the ceiling. The third demon death, I said, not even looking at the circle drawn beneath the slowly rotating body. I didn't have to. I knew what it would show. Ophelia hit the floor in a dead faint. Chapter 18. Okay, I didn't see that one coming. I mean, I have to assume she's really dead. So, hmm. But we knew that Ophelia was lying already. Hmm. Well, let's see how she really reacts, I guess. I stood in the opening to the hallway and searched the club for a familiar face, wishing more than ever that Jim was with me. I needed someone trustworthy, someone who wouldn't take one look at Perdita's dead body and run screaming to the police. But how was I to tell who was who? There was a slight anticipatory rustle to the crowd of people drifting around the club as everyone paused and looked at the front entrance. Drake sauntered down the steps in a show of masculine grace. Istvan and Pal in tight wing formation behind him. I stepped back into the shadow of the dimly lit hallway, not wanting Drake to see me. He was the last person I wanted to call upon for help with Perdita. Even as I scanned for someone familiar, the crowd rippled again as Fia approached Drake with languid grace. The two men exchanged cheek kisses. Then Fia leaned in to say something private to Drake, his hand gesturing toward the hall I stood in. Drake lifted his head as if to smell the air. I stepped farther back into the shadows, retreating to Perdita's office. Ophelia moaned as I patted her cheeks in the approved vague assistance to women who who has fainted manner. Purdy, she mumbled, her eyelashes fluttering. No, it's just me, I said, looking up when the door opened, and Drake and Fiat and Pal and Istvan. And I think that's Ronaldo and another one of Fiat's bullies in the hall, although it's a little hard to see with everyone in the way. The two wyverns stood silent in the doorway, both staring with apparent surprise at Perdita's body as it slowly turned. Who? Ophelia shrieked, pushing me back as she got to her feet. She pointed a finger at Drake, huge tears rolling down her cheeks as she stabbed the air in front of him. It's him. He killed Purdy. He killed her just as he killed the others. He killed my. She dissolved into heart-wrenching sobs, her hands covering her face. I helped her to a chair, glancing back at the two men who blocked the doorway. Unless you want everyone in the club to troop in here and have a look, I suggest you set your men as guards at the end of the hall and close the door. Drake nodded as his men who immediately left, or at his men who immediately left. Fia was slower to send his men off, but eventually he did. The door closed with a soft click that was the only sound in the room. Ophelia was sobbing silently into her hands, her body shaking as she wept. I squatted next to her, offering what comfort I could. Drake circled Perdita's body, his bright green eyes noting everything. I was sure. Fiat leaned back against the door as if keeping intruders out, but his eyes gave him away. They were coolly speculative, the eyes of someone truly surprised by what he saw before him. I cleared my throat, the noise unusually loud in the closed confines of the room. Drake, you've been accused of murdering Perdita. Did you do it? His gaze met mine over the slowly rotating body. No more than I killed Aurora or the Venedager. I smiled a sad little smile. Why had I expected I would get a straight answer out of him? I turned to Fiat. You haven't been accused, but you were here when Ophelia and I arrived, so you had opportunity. Did you kill her? I did not kill women, Fiat said stiffly. His shoulders made an odd sort of jerky motion of denial. Well, not often do I kill them. How reassuring that is. Can I ask another question? If it would please you, Fiat answered. I stood up and yelled at the top of my lungs, why can't any of you dragons answer a simple question when it is asked? I'll be the first one to admit that I might have been showing a wee bit of stress. What with people trying to kidnap me and arrest me for murder and steal things from me, but is that any reason for Drake to march over and slap me as if I were hysterical? Oh, you are going to be so sorry you did that, I snarled, making a fist and swinging it. Fiat plucked me off Drake, but not before I got in a really solid right jab to Drake's nose. No one hits me. No one, I yelled as Fiat dragged me backward. Drake gingerly touched his nose, staring in patient surprise at the blood smeared across his fingertips. If I were you, Fiat said softly in my ear, I would run. Drake's roar of anger shattered the only two windows in the office. It also summoned both his and Fiat's men, all four of whom burst into the room just as Drake started toward me. I didn't wait around to debate the issue. I ran straight through the men at the door, across the hall, and into the manager's office, trailing bits of crime scene tape behind me as I whirled around and locked the door a hair breadth before Drake reached it. It took him all of 5 seconds to kick it open. I backed away as he stalked into the room, pausing only to close the door behind him. Look, I said, my hands up in self-protection stance, number 7. I know you're a bit pissed right now, but all right, we'll end it there for the night. You used to watch Puff the Magic Dragon. Well, how many episodes were there? How many seasons are we talking? I want to make sure I don't flash my top when I get up. I think we're good. This is so low. It's the a Zoom from last night. I love how annoying. I love how he's like, get a hold of yourself, woman, snap out of it, like an old 50s TV show. You're hysterical. She's like, nobody talks to me like that. No one. Oh my god, what do you guys think is going on? Okay, I don't trust the two sisters. Like I said that. There's something weird. And I miss Jim. Where the hell is Jim when you need him? I think her and Drake need to talk. They need to have it out. Communication is so important. Did she really date Drake? I mean, you have no confirmation from him that any of that happened. Like anything that came out of those sisters' mouths, if they even are sisters, I don't trust a word. I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow. We pick it up there. Very Halloween. Doctor, not a warlock. I know, but she's right. Sometimes you need to talk to, your close ally, even if they are a demon dog. So, all right, my loves. Tomorrow, Monday, I have to pee. I love you so much. Get a good sleep. Mm, sparkle, sparkle.